Okay, hello, welcome back to the next lesson in our ecosystems and environment topic. So we're following directly on from last lesson on biomass transfer. So if you haven't watched the last video, I suggest you do, where we explain what biomass is, what trophic levels are, a recap of all of the key words in this topic. So make sure you've watched that before you watch this one. So I ended last time on a question which was what happens to all that material that's lost. So at every trophic level, material is lost. Only about 10% tops makes it from one trophic level to another in terms of the mass that moves up the food chain, which is why our food chains are quite limited in length. Okay, so today the main objective is, well, where does it go? Right, what happens to all that biomass? So we're looking at this bit here. Look, the idea. So we've done the top bit. Students should be able to describe pyramids of biomass and explain how biomass is lost, okay, the percentages there, and then obviously we've got this losses of what they're due to. And if you look over towards the other side, towards the far side over there, right, we've got calculating efficiency of biomass transfer between trophic levels. So a bit of math skills in this one as well. So it's a very quick little video, but there are a couple of exercises where I'm going to ask you to pause the video and have a go, okay? So moving straight in, first things first, this is the first thing I want you to do. Now, under my shoulder here, right, if I go this way, that box there at the bottom represents food going into this horse, okay? So that's obviously going to be grass. It is a primary consumer, okay? It's a herbivore, that's all its digestive system can do. Now, what I want you to do is pause the video at this point, right? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes to fill in, right, to try and explain where does that biomass go. There are 5 separate things that biomass ends up ending up in, okay? One of them is in the horse's tissues. I'll give you that one for free. What are the other 4? Okay, so pause the video now, take a few minutes, try and have a guess what should be under those boxes. Go now. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. So let's get some answers then. So first one, right, pretty obvious. This is a mammal. This is a warm-blooded animal, okay? So it spends an awful lot of its calories keeping itself warm. You, for example, as a rough rule of thumb, we say that adult men are supposed to get about 2,500 calories a day and adult women about 2,000 calories a day. Obviously, that depends what kind of life you're leading and what activity you're doing. Of course, an elite female athlete would need a lot more calories than a male couch potato. It's a rough rule of thumb. So out of that 2,000 for adult women, maybe on average about 1,800 is used just to keep your own body warm, to keep your own internal conditions correct, right? That body temperature. So that is quite an extreme one. Now, the figure of 2,000 out of 2,500 is used for men, somehow assuming that men are more active and have more muscle mass that burns energy more quickly. Not always true, as I say, it depends on the individual. But as a rough rule of thumb, it's a lot of energy that you waste as heat, right? In terms of cellular respiration. Okay, 75% roughly of the energy, right? You generate about 40 watts of infrared energy, which is how thermal imaging cameras work. Okay, so one of them was mammals lose heat, or all animals lose heat, but mammals in particular lose heat from cellular respiration. Next one, right? If we carry on, is this. So biomass lost, right, used to provide energy for movement. Now this is also what we call a respiratory loss. So muscle contraction is powered by respiration, and the horse has to move around. It can't graze the same bit of grass over and over and over. It's got to move to other bits of grass. Now, of course, a predator would have a lot more of its energy lost in this way because its food's going to run away. Grass is not famed for that, of course. So what we've got, so that grass is not famed for that, of course. So next one, biomass lost in urine and of course biomass lost in feces are the other 2 there. The idea being that of course you get these what's called respiratory losses where the horse, these sort of waste product losses where the horse can't digest a lot of that material. Okay, so particularly if you're eating plant material, there's a lot of it you just can't digest. So moving on, and I'm aware I'm going a little bit transparent on this arm here. Look, my arm is there, I assure you. Right, energy losses in food chains, right? Boil down to this, and this is one of the few times where if you get this question on a GCSE, I can actually tell you what the answer to the question is, okay? The answers go like this. You've got your respiratory losses, heat and movement. You've got the waste products and indigestible material, right? So the inedible parts and the feces and urine. Okay, so these are all good answers: heat, movement, inedible parts of things, feces and urine. For example, when you eat an animal, if you're a meat eater, you don't eat its bones or its hair or anything like that. With plants, you don't eat the trunk of a tree or all of its roots, right? You tend to only eat selective parts, okay? And then the only bit that actually manages to make it into counting for the next trophic level, right, is the bit that's added to the biomass of the organism. So that's our sort of 10% we were talking about, at maximum we were talking about last time. In reality, for the horse there, because grass is quite low nutrient, it would be about 1 to 2%. For animal to animal biomass transfers, then you might be getting up to about 10%. But even so, it's a very small amount. So if you're asked that question, where does all that extra biomass go? There are your answers. You've got the respiratory losses, which are heat and movement, and you've got the waste products and indigestible material, like the inedible parts of whatever's being eaten, all of the feces and urine. Okay, so those are your answers to that question. Right, so let's talk about efficiency a little bit more. This is a typical sort of food chain. Maybe the percentages are a little bit overestimated there, but we rounded the numbers to make it easy. So 1% of the energy from the sun will make it into the mass of the grass, about 10% will make it into the rabbit, and about 10% into the fox, okay, of that. So it's absolutely tiny. So this answers our previous question, explain, which is up there, look, explain how the loss of biomass at each trophic level affects the number of organisms in each trophic level, right? And that is basically the idea that there's not enough biomass. So if you were an organism that purely fed on foxes, there simply wouldn't be enough foxes for you to get enough mass. Okay, so that's the answer to that question. Okay, again, if that comes up, that's what you say. So in terms of percentages, as a rough idea, only about 1% of the instant energy from the sun is used to make biomass. 10% maximum can be transferred from the next trophic levels thereon. In reality, in herbivores, maybe it's about 1 to 2%, and then in carnivores, maybe up to 10%, but even then that's a very good transfer. So of course, number of organisms decreases very rapidly through the trophic levels, which means 3 to 5 is pretty normal. Okay? So how can this be represented? How can you actually represent, right, all the different data? Now, hopefully, I'm talking some physics here that you'll already know, which is the idea of Sankey diagrams. Okay, so Sankey diagrams are a way of representing energy loss. Okay, so this picture we've got just here shows us about the energy that's coming through the atmosphere, and this is where the size of the arrow represents the total energy in, and then each of the arrows coming off represents the energy going off to that particular thing. So we've got the reflected energy there, we've got reflected energy, we've got heat to the land and the atmosphere, we've got evaporating water, creating wind, so on and so forth. Okay, this same process can be used for animals, for animal transfers, okay, and for what an animal does in terms of its animal budget. So I'm going to give you another little puzzle to have a look at, and I'm going to go off and let you do this for a while. So pause the video, okay, and actually try and have a go at this. Okay, so here are 4 Sankey diagrams. Okay, one of them represents a cold-blooded animal, one a warm-blooded animal, one a carnivore, one a herbivore. Which is which, and how do you know? Okay, so pause the video now and have a go. Okay, hopefully you've done that. So I'll come back in. So hopefully you've done that. Well, this shouldn't take a genius to work out what we're talking about here, right? It's not too tricky. So if we go from here, from this one, as you can see, there's lots of material lost in feces and urine in this one, which suggests this one probably, right, is eating some stuff that isn't very digestible. Okay, so that one there logically would be a herbivore. Okay, because it's got a large loss of undigested food in its feces. If we go over to that one over there, if we go over to that one far over the other side, right, that one over there, then, right, that one is a cold-blooded animal. And your clue there, of course, is that it's got very little heat loss. Okay, now cold-blooded animals are much more efficient than warm-blooded animals. They don't need to take in as much food. They can go for long periods without eating. Think snakes and lizards and things like that. Okay, now this guy down here, okay, this guy down here, right, as you can see, look, there's quite a big arrow for movement and not so much for feces and urine. So that animal, it seems, would actually be chasing something. Okay, so we're going to say that one there is a carnivore. Okay, little loss of undigested food and feces because what it's eating is very digestible, meat and animal products, but in terms of energy losses, it's losing a huge amount through its movement. Okay, and then we're over to the other side over there. The last one, therefore, by process of elimination, must be our sort of typical warm-blooded animal, right? Large losses due to heat production. And I've already said the kind of heat losses that you're losing every day as a warm-blooded omnivore. Okay, so that's the kind of problem you could be given. Right, you could also be given some maths. Now, I regularly get asked by GCSE students, how do you calculate percentage? What's the formula for percentage? And to which I say, you're a GCSE student. You should know. You've been doing that since primary school. But the top tip I would give is basically just numeracy. Look at the data, right? If some energy is that animal there's got 100 joules or 100 watts or 100 grams of whatever it is, and this one's 50, well, that's half, isn't it? Right? So that's a 50% decrease. If your calculator says 200%, well, you've done something mental, haven't you? Right? So look for what you're being asked for. Look at your numbers critically. I don't expect you to memorise every single possible permutation of every single formula. I don't think any teacher expects that. But we do expect you to apply some common sense and some numeracy. So look carefully at what the question is being asked for, because the maths won't be hard, so they'll get the difficulty in there by sort of hiding the data in a diagram, in a table, in a graph, whatever that might be. So make sure you're up on that. What are they asking for at the end? Are they asking for a percentage, or are they asking for a fraction? If they're asking for a fraction or a decimal, it's going to be 0 point something, or a fraction, half, a quarter, whatever. If they're asking for a percentage, you're probably going to have to do that last bit up there, which is times by 100. Okay? The amount of students I've seen answer these questions, do all the hard graft, pick out all the work, do the sum, and then either multiply by 100 when they didn't need to, or not multiply by 100 when they did, just because they didn't read the question, right, is huge. So, exam tips, look for what you're being asked for, think critically about what it's going to be. Is it a percentage or a fraction? What are you being asked to answer in? Multiply or don't by 100 as appropriate. Okay? So, that's us for today. Okay, that's basically biomass transfer. As I said, it was a very quick one. There's a couple of little exercises in there. Best thing you can do now is go away and practice, right, doing some efficiency calculations. There are absolutely tons available. So thanks very much, and I will see you next time.